Hello and welcome back everyone to another episode of Amphibious Analysis. Slothcakes here, and today we have a special guest. Some may say he's the most successful amphibious mobile suit of the 1 Year War, but I personally would say he's one of the most successful mobile suits of Zeon during the 1 Year War. So let's introduce the MSM-07 zgok. And let's start with appearance, and this is gonna be real simple. Step 1, we get a crab. Make it bipedal, turn it into a robot, and boom, we got the zgok. But for a little more detail, his silhouette kind of reminds me like an edged out pizza slice or like a Dorito with crab claws and legs. It's a very simple looking body, and some of his earlier depictions, his arms look really stubby, but they did extend out in later depictions. But still has that upside down triangle with limbs sticking out. So, starting with the history, he was developed and deployed in 0079 and manufactured at California base. We heard this before, but we do get a change of manufacturer. Not Zeonic Company, nor Zinmad. The zgok is made by MIP or MIP Company, a company with a weird track record. We haven't ran into them in amphibious analysis yet, so let's do it now. MIP has developed about 11 things that Zeon adopted. This ranges things from the DOP to mostly mobile armors like the Big Row and the Zacrello. But funny enough, their biggest claim to fame is the first and only mobile suit they made, the zgok and its variants. So it's kinda funny to me that the first and only mobile suit you make turns out to be amazing throughout the board, so good on you guys. And to give you some more history, after the 1 Year War, like many Zeon manufacturers, they got absorbed by Anaheim Electronics. So how did the zgok come to be? After the success of the GOG, Zeon wanted more amphibious mobile suits and pushed the second wave with the 8-guy and the zgok. However, during production, the zgok was delayed and the 8-guy was produced and deployed. While delayed, they revised the zgok using the combat data of the GOG and the newly deployed 8-guy. Soon after, the zgok came to be, and they had some high expectations with this guy, and he met all of them. This guy blew everything out the water, so let's go and see why and how. So, best place to start is with some numbers, and the zgok stands at 18.4 meters, which is just a teeny bit taller than the GOG at 18.3 and shorter than the 8-guy at 19.2. But more importantly, and where we see a much bigger difference, is his weight. The zgok comes in at 96.4 tons at max, and at empty we're looking at 65.1, compared to the GOG at max at 159.4 and empty at 82.4, and let's throw the 8-guy in there because why the hell not. We're looking at max at 129 and empty at 91.6. And we can stop there, but if I threw other amphibious mobile suits at the time, there's a pattern of them being hefty, barrel-bodied, big-boned, whatever you want to say, big-ass guys. However, the zgok changed this with being significantly lighter. The zgok's max weight is a little under 100 tons, while the GOG's is over 150. And the zgok at max is just 5 tons heavier than the 8-guy at empty. So what's up with that? Why the difference? Well, we're gonna pass things like ammo capacity and the material they're made out of. They're all made out of super high tensile steel, but the zgok gets changed later on and we'll cover that in a second. But we're gonna be talking about the major contributors to his weight. First up is defense. The zgok is thinner than the other mobile suits and much less plated. If we look at things like the GOG, he's so heavily armored, he did take a hyper hammer to the face. But at other things like the zgok, which are just walking fortresses, these mobile suits are really built to take a lot of punishment. Next up is cooling system. The GOG and 8-guy store large tanks of water in them that fill up with seawater which help cool down the generator. And you can easily see why having large tanks of water in you is gonna add some weight. The zgok on the other hand does not have this, so you might be thinking he's cutting corners, right? Well no, the zgok has a brand new cooling system that utilizes air and water flow. This system, while complicated, is pretty simple. It just allows it to recycle water, so instead of keeping it in them, it brings in water, uses it to cool the generator, then expends it and brings in new water. And this can work in land as well while bringing in air, expending out the hot air, and repeat. This makes it so he doesn't have to keep these large tanks of water in him, which drastically increases weight. And because he doesn't have these large tanks, the zgok can slim down, having a much thinner frame compared to the others, which drastically lowers his weight and increases his speed. And since the cooling system helps with the generator, let's move on over there. And this is where the zgok's upsides just keep on going up. The zgok is equipped with a brand new compact generator, which decreases the size, which again allows him to have a thinner body, decreases the weight. You see a pattern here? But this newer generator does not skimp on output, because it can push an even higher output of the priors, and with his cooling system, he can reach an output of 2,480 kilowatts. Now let's just keep on mentioning upsides and talk about one of his most notable things, and that is his speed. The zgok can reach 190 kilometers an hour in water, making him the fastest amphibious mobile suit of the time, and he has a whopping 87 kilometers on land. This is just slightly less than a Zaku too, and his speed is contributed to a few things. First, and to say again for like the 5th time, the zgok is lighter, more compact, and walks like a regular mobile suit. A lot easier to get by when you have less weight to carry. And the 8 guy kinda gets a waddle going when he walks, the zgok just straight up waddles if he wants to get somewhere, and the zgok's too damn big to even walk, he hovers. But moving to more specifics, on his legs he has thermonuclear reactor water jets which help zip the zgok along in cruise mode. And on his back, he has large chemical fuel rockets, which can give him the extra oomph he needs in certain scenarios, either be on water to move even faster, or if he's on land, he can actually use it to get lift. Not only that, instead of surfacing normally, just going from water to land, the zgok can actually just go from water, launch himself into the air, and land on land. This allows him to just come from above. So just as a word of warning, if you're near a body of water, please be careful, because not only can that body of water shoot you, but the zgok can close the distance much faster than you think, and he can do a drastic number of things of either just straight up running at you, or launching straight up in the air and coming from above. Good luck. But more seriously and importantly, this gives the zgok tasks, missions, objectives that he can accomplish that the others can't. Either be on land or water, he's much faster so he can cover much more distance. And because of his land capabilities, he's just as good as a stealth unit as the 8 guy. And while we haven't covered combat yet, I've been talking about positive things on the zgok for like 5 minutes now. Spoiler, it's also positive, it's one of his best features. But before we get into that, there's a few more things I want to cover, and first is him having a commander version, with some upgrades. The MSM-07 zgok commander type is visually and near mechanically similar to the zgok, and unlike things like the Zaku commander, which has a commander fin, you can't tell the difference unless one is colored like charts. The changes in the commander type is a higher reactor output, and well, I'm sorry, I've said this like 8 times already, but I just have to keep on repeating myself. He has a change in armor material, making him lighter, which makes his maneuverability much better, which you get the point already, same song and dance. And due to these small upgrades, and maybe other factors like the commander type being just a teeny bit more expensive to make than the regular zgok, later on in the war, he actually phased out the regular one, and the commander type became the standard model, which is a really smart move, so good on you, Zeon. And finally, moving on to some negatives, they both share the same cons, and first up is, he's a hard mobile suit to pilot. We don't know the extent to this. In general, amphibious mobile suits have been noted to be difficult, so this guy's just even more difficult, and I don't have anything to compare it to. Is this like driving an automatic car versus a stick shift, riding a bicycle versus a unicycle? All we have to go off is that it's hard, and we could just end it off here, but I feel like extending this segment a little longer, so let's go into it. So first, him being an amphibious mobile suit, you have all the baggage of being an amphibious mobile suit. You need to learn how to use it in water and stuff, blah blah blah. But he is much faster, so if you go from a regular one to him, you're gonna have to deal with that speed, which could be uncomfortable. Not only that, maybe the zgok's just a little bit more sensitive. Like playing an FPS game and you use 5 sensitivity, but when you use the zgok you use like 8 sensitivity. It could be something like that. And also, in my opinion, piloting a Zaku seems a lot easier than piloting a bipedal crab thing. I feel like there's a lot to get used to there. And next up, and one of the more important problems, is he is a Zeon mobile suit that's not a Zaku. And what does that mean? Well, it means he shares no parts with other existing amphibious mobile suits at the time, like the God, making him a pain in the ass to repair and maintain. Not only that, Krabby over here is a luxury that only a few can afford. He's expensive. How expensive? No idea, but he has state-of-the-art things. He has a new cooling system, he has a new generator, he has unique parts, and when we go over his weapons, spoiler alert, he has beam weapons, which is gonna increase the price, making him quite a pretty penny to make. And while we're in the topic of his weapons, let's head on over there. Upon the zgok's forearm, we have 3 sharp blades. These are his iron nails, a simple but effective melee weapon, and while we've covered these before, we'll still continue to do so. Now these aren't too special, not really physically different, but the zgok has the element of speed on his side. While with the priors, we covered things like the God, which can utilize his weight to deliver one hell of a slap, the zgok can take advantage of his speed. The most iconic mention would be Char with a running start was able to stab straight through a gym. Now for a horrifying fun fact, there have been cases where the zgok would do this and actually get stuck. This was more likely on naval ships, but this caused a massive problem because what would lead would be the zgok and the pilot going down with the ship, and you're now down a zgok and down a pilot that could pilot a zgok. This actually led to a variant that fixed this problem by moving the iron nails to a location that they can be detachable, and that's the ram zgok, but that's for another time. And for another interesting fun fact, in some model kits, the zgok has an option for 4 iron nails. Now, why is this? Did he originally have 4 iron nails? No. Did the commander type have it? No. Was there maybe an animation error? Well, not that I know of. Maybe some official artwork? Besides the model kits? No. Maybe the original concept art for him? Again, no. I actually have no idea why he has 4 iron nail option. My best guess is because it looks cool. If you guys have an actual reason for this, please leave it down in the comments because I'm seriously stumped on it. Moving on, but staying on his arms, we have his twin megaparticle cannons. Housed one in each arm, these are powerful internal beam guns. And unlike the GOGs, which are more spready when they'll shoot, these are the standard shooty kind. And like the GOG, the zgok pushed the wave of mobile suits being mass produced, with beam weapons being one of the first of the few. And unlike the 8 guy, whose NPC is rare to find and usually a Vulcan gun to cut costs, the zgok doesn't have this option, so you'll always get the 2 NPCs. But on the downside, this does raise costs like I said, and makes it harder to repair. But with his NPCs, and in addition to the iron nails, either be up close or at mid-range, he's a mobile suit you don't want to run into. Now for a fun fact, because of the location, the zgok can easily shoot off his iron nails, but thankfully there's a safety feature where the NPCs won't go off if the iron nails are closed. Now I can easily see this being a problem where you want to shoot but your iron nails don't open up fast enough, which could result in many problems like, you kind of not living anymore. So maybe there was a safety switch you could flip off. And on the flip side, the same variant we talked about earlier, the ram zgok, fixes this problem with his iron nails being in a different location so he can't blow them off. Moving to the top of his head, we have 6 holes that house his 240mm missile launchers. These are housing 30 rounds, giving him a decent amount of rockets to throw. Because of the location, they fire straight up, and interestingly, they're not torpedoes. These missiles can fire in water, but they do suffer from low resistance to the underwater pressures. Instead, they're mostly used for the zgok to pop his head up and fire to either cover his landing, target things near the water, or be used for anti-air purposes. And remembering his NPCs in his arms, he has some effective anti-air options, meaning be in water, ground, or air, you ain't running away from the death crab. And on land, zgok can easily ab crunch, pointing the top of his head forward. And we just gotta give it to the zgok, he has so many options he could use, it's so scary. In water, he's gonna catch up to you, you're not gonna be running away from him, so he has that covered. If he's on land and you're not in face stabbing distance, he still has options of throwing rockets at you and using his NPCs. And if you're in the air, don't think you're safe because he has rockets and his NPCs are in his hands, so he can easily aim at you and just shoot you out the sky. So like I said in the beginning, the zgok is in a league of his own, being one of the best amphibious mobile suits of the 1 Year War, and in my opinion one of the best mobile suits of Zeon during the 1 Year War. He shows it, and yes, this is me being very biased. This series is called Amphibious Analysis, for God's sake. What do you expect? But the truth does show, the zgok wouldn't be in the position he is if he sucked. He wouldn't be shown as an ace mobile suit a majority of the time, Char wouldn't choose to pilot one, and he wouldn't have as much variance as he does if he didn't show promise. And while we're on this subject, I do believe these guys deserve their own episode, but I'll give each variant, well the important ones, a quick spotlight here. If you ever looked at the zgok and want him to be more face stabby, and you could also E-Honda someone, we have the Ram zgok. Now if you want him to do that, but with less stabby and more punchy, and to be ground focused, we have the zgok. Now if you ditch that idea and you want to have some heretical concepts and make a zgok fly, we have the zgok. But if you want to be an extra degenerate and you want to get the zgok and make him not amphibious and make him go into space, you sick freak, we have the Gashia. But hey, if none of this fancies you, I understand. Maybe you don't want any of these flashy gadgets or anything, maybe you just want the regular zgok, and we got you covered. We're gonna get the zgok, right? And we're just gonna make it better. But keeping it the same, it's gonna have the same type of weapons, it's gonna still do the same thing, but it's just literally going to be better in every single way. And that's the zgok E. And those are the big ones. We have other small ones like the zgok crab, which is kind of like a zgok with a whacking stick. Then we have the RF zgok, which is just a zgok made 40 years later. And then there's the zgok-E, which is a mobile suit that appears in G-Reco, which bears a lot of resemblance to the zgok. So whatever scenario you get yourself into, know that there's most likely a zgok that can help you. And since we just went by variants, let's talk about some redesigns. First up is the Kondo version, and it looks thinner with the limbs, but has much more detail going on. It still looks like the zgok, it's just the main chest is much thicker and we have a definitive waist hip area, and much thicker legs. Those claws do look tiny though, proportion wise. Next up is Satoshi's, and this one looks a little weird, but I can say this in a very simple sentence. It looks cartoony in a way that looks like it's from Looney Tunes. It's very smooth, very round, the limbs are thin, it kind of looks like it wiggles around, like you could hit it with a hammer and it will just flatten like a pancake and kind of like unravel like an accordion. And for Gundam the Origin, their zgok is just much more busy, more detail. It honestly looks much more like the zgok E than the regular zgok. It just has much more things going on like all the Origin suits. And finally, we're going to be moving to Gundam Thunderbolt because this zgok has a few differences. First of all, with his appearance, he has the basic amphibious mobile suit Thunderbolt design. He's thinner, he's more round, he has more humanoid proportions to him. He does have shoulder armor, which is similar to that of the GOG. Pretty simple stuff across the board. However, his weapons is where we get some changes. The zgok is equipped with a chest launcher that fires a projectile attached to a chain. The zgoks were using this to hold the Atlas down while they took turns punching him, and while this didn't work on the Atlas because main character plus Gundam, if this was a regular mobile suit, this sounds like a really good idea to just gang up on a single unit. Another and horrifying way this weapon could be used is anchoring, latching onto a mobile suit, then diving into the ocean and dragging a non-amphibious mobile suit to the abyss. Another change was the zgok's megaparticle cannons in the arms were replaced with Vulcan guns. This is similar to that of the 8 guy, where if they wanted to cut cost and resources, they would give Vulcan guns instead of NPCs, which is much more realistic in a way because NPCs are expensive, Vulcan guns are cheaper, and a deployed zgok with a Vulcan gun is better than a not deployed zgok. However, in the scenario the zgok appeared in, the NPCs would have come really in handy. And for the final fun fact, did you know the zgok's design was inspired from the alien Zarab from Ultraman? And the connection doesn't end here. In Ultraman Gaia, the Apati is based off the Zaku, and the Gyan Q is based off the Egu guy, which further cements the idea that if you slap a little flash onto any Zeon mobile suit, they make really cool kaijus. So as we come to an end, I hope my agenda pushing convinced you that this mecha Mirelurk is not just for show. And what I want to leave you with is simple, and it's this: the zgok doesn't just perform well on land for an amphibious mobile suit, nor does he perform great for an amphibious mobile suit. The zgok is just an amazing mobile suit. Yes, he has his flaws, which get mostly fixed in the zgok E, but that's for a later time. But damn, this guy's something. He wouldn't be at the position he was without it. And his major debut being the Battle of Jabura, which was a failure, thank you Char, he still outperformed the other amphibious mobile suits. Well, because most of them didn't get deployed, but that's for a different time. But not counting those negatives, and I think I'm getting the point across to you guys, let's focus on the positives. The zgok has a very special place. Not for Zeon, not for mobile suit kind, and not for Universal Century, but for me. Because he's up there with some of my favorite amphibious mobile suits, but just mobile suits in general, because the zgok is one cool looking dude. So if you already forgotten everything I said in this video or just watched it in 2x speed like a psycho, let's just have you remember this one thing. No matter what you have to say about the zgok, either be from the Federation, from Zeon, early Universal Century, late, someone who knows nothing about Gundam, someone who only builds Gunpla, we can all agree on one simple thing, and that the zgok is damn cute. And that's all that matters at the end. So thank you for watching and hope to see you next time.